As I walked into the crowded bistro, searching for my client, my eyes landed on someone I hadn't expected to see, Lauren, my ex-wife. She was sitting closely with a middle-aged man who had clearly let himself go. His expensive attire screamed wealth. Seeing her with him triggered a wave of memories. 3 years had passed since our divorce, but the pain still felt fresh, like an open wound. I was no longer a part of her world, just an outsider, watching her move on while I struggled to piece my own life together. It all started with a business trip to Colorado. I was supposed to meet a client, but not long after setting off, he called to cancel. He had been in a minor car accident. Thankfully, he wasn't hurt, but it derailed my plans. I kept calm, reassured him, and suggested we reschedule. But as the long drive back loomed, I decided to turn things around. I'd surprise Lauren with a romantic evening at home. 90 minutes later, I pulled into our street, imagining a quiet dinner. But something felt off as soon as I saw 3 unfamiliar cars parked in the driveway. Lauren often had friends over, so I brushed it off, parking further down the road. When I walked into the house, though, I froze. Clothes were carelessly thrown around the living room, an unsettling mess that made my stomach churn. My suspicions grew as I heard sounds from upstairs. Lauren's moans. And they weren't from pain or distress. I knew instantly. She was with someone else. Part of me wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. I had to know the truth. I quietly crept upstairs, her cries growing louder. Peeking around the doorframe of our bedroom, I saw her with not one man, but 3. 2 strangers and her boss, Brad Evans. My blood boiled seeing Brad. The way he praised her, showering her with vulgar compliments, turned my stomach. They treated her like an object, something to be used. I quickly pulled out my phone and hit record. I filmed the whole thing, every humiliating second. After a few minutes, I could barely stand it anymore. My heart pounded in my chest as I quietly made my way back downstairs, unnoticed. Rage mixed with disgust. Once I reached my office, I opened the safe and grabbed my gun. I wasn't someone who resorted to violence, but I needed the sense of control that holding it gave me. I clicked off the safety, just in case. My mind was racing. I needed to think clearly, to make sure I didn't do something reckless. Still seething, I headed back to the living room. I grabbed their wallets and keys from the pile of discarded clothes and headed outside. I deflated the tires on all the cars, including Lauren's, a sense of twisted satisfaction filling me. She had her phone upstairs on the bedside table, so I dialed her number, positioning myself behind the staircase so I could hear them scramble. After a few rings, she picked up, breathless. "Hey, Andrew, how's Colorado?" I could hear faint laughter in the background. She was trying too hard to sound casual. "You sound out of breath. Everything all right?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, just ran upstairs for my phone," she said, clearly trying to compose herself. I told her the client canceled, so I'd be back soon. "Maybe we can have dinner?" "You're coming home now?" she asked, clearly panicked. "Yes, just need to freshen up." "See you soon," I replied. The chaos that followed was almost comical, for panicked figures rushed downstairs, scrambling to dress. Lauren threw on her clothes in a fluster and hurriedly ushered them out. If she had been paying attention, she might have noticed my car parked a little further down the street. But she didn't. As they tried to escape, I slipped in through the side door. The men were shouting, and Lauren stepped onto the porch to try to calm them. That's when I slammed the front door, making my presence known. As I slammed the door shut and turned the lock, I knew there was no way Lauren could talk her way out of this mess. She caught a glimpse of my furious face through the window, but at this point, words were completely useless. The 3 men, who had been standing on the porch, started pounding on the door, demanding their belongings. I had no intention of giving them anything. Grabbing my phone, I dialed 911 and reported an attempted break-in. Before I could even finish, the dispatcher let me know a neighbor had already called and provided my name and address. The police arrived swiftly, barely minutes later. While they questioned Lauren, I stepped forward, asserting that my wife had been assaulted and demanding that the men be arrested. The guys instantly objected, claiming they were invited and that everything had been consensual. All eyes turned to Lauren, waiting for her to speak. She hesitated, But after a few moments, she admitted with shame that she had invited them and had willingly participated in everything. The men visibly relaxed, relieved to avoid any legal issues. More police vehicles showed up, and the officers gathered everyone's information. One of the senior officers pulled me aside, glancing at Lauren with a mix of pity and disdain. He explained that because she had invited them into the house and everyone involved was a consenting adult, there was nothing they could do legally. He suggested marriage counseling, though his voice dripped with judgment. I told them to call a cab for Lauren because she wasn't staying in the house that night. One of the men arranged for the taxi, and they discovered their car tires were flat. They tried to accuse me of tampering with their cars, but I firmly denied it. Lauren stood on the porch, her head down, waiting for the taxi. I watched her, my anger still burning in my chest. She took a few tentative steps toward me, completely unaware that I had a gun hidden away in the house. If she had known, she might have fled. "Andrew, I'm so sorry," she started, but I cut her off. "You destroyed everything," I hissed. "I will never forgive you for this. Brad called you a slut, and frankly, I think that name suits you perfectly. From now on, that's all you are to me. If you need to talk to me, do it through Rebecca," I said coldly, referring to my lawyer. With that, I turned and walked back inside, locking the door behind me. Through the window, I saw Brad try to comfort her, but she pushed him away. For a split second, I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it quickly faded. Returning to the bedroom, the lingering scent of her lemon perfume made me furious. I tore the mattress off the bed and threw it out onto the lawn. Grabbing my toolbox, I dismantled the bed frame piece by piece and tossed the remains outside as well. The destruction in the room mirrored the ruin of my life. I grabbed Lauren's phone and scrolled through her messages and contacts, finding exactly what I expected. Endless chains of messages, videos, and photos that confirmed the truth of what I had just witnessed. I laughed bitterly at my own blindness. How had I not seen this coming? I gathered all of Lauren's belongings from the bedroom and threw them onto the front lawn, watching them scatter in the night air. Downstairs, I found more of her things and, to my disgust, a hidden stack of DVDs in the guest room. My heart sank again as I looked at the labels on them. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. I lined the DVDs up on the shelf and played them one by one. The first showed Lauren and her friend Karen at Karen's house, caught up in acts I could barely stand to watch. For hours, I watched, tears burning down my face, until I reached the last two discs. The second to last one was Lauren with her personal trainer, a service I had paid for, no less. She had often come home too tired after her sessions for anything intimate. Now I knew why. But it was the final disc that delivered the ultimate betrayal. There was Lauren, in her office, with Greg and his boss, Mark Reynolds, a man I had once looked up to. Seeing this broke something deep inside me. I placed Lauren's phone, the DVDs, and the footage I had recorded earlier into a large envelope. I would give everything to Rebecca, my lawyer, and my closest friend, Alex, one of the few people I could trust with this horror. I collapsed onto the couch, feeling overwhelmed by the exhaustion and emotional pain from the previous night. My body finally gave in, and I drifted into a restless sleep. When morning came, I called in sick to work, unable to deal with anything outside of this crisis. I knew I needed help, so I reached out to my friend and lawyer, Rebecca Stone. Her secretary, Margot, answered the phone. Someone I'd known almost as long as I had known Rebecca. "Margot, it's Andrew Whitman. I need to speak with Rebecca as soon as possible." "It's urgent," I said, the tension clear in my voice. "Rebecca is in court all day," Margot explained, "but she told me to squeeze you in as soon as she's free. Be here in an hour. Mention Laura Sinclair if she hesitates. That should get her attention." I hung up and started getting dressed when my phone rang again. I glanced at the screen, dreading that it might be Lauren. Instead, it was an unknown number. Hesitant, I answered. "Hello, this is Andrew Whitman," I said cautiously. "Mr. Whitman, this is Mark Reynolds from Lauren's office. I would like to discuss what happened last night at your house. Can we meet today to clarify the situation?" His voice was calm, but I could sense the underlying concern. Mark Reynolds, one of the men from the footage, sounded more worried about protecting his business than anything else. He knew that Ben and Lauren were valuable assets, and his real concern was how this scandal could damage his reputation. He was already angling for damage control. "I'll see you at 2 o'clock, I replied, keeping my tone firm. Later that morning, I found myself sitting across from Rebecca in her office. As we discussed the evidence I had, Rebecca didn't sugarcoat anything. "With what we have, Reynolds will likely offer a settlement. We should aim for no less than $2.5 million. She offered a small smile, trying to lighten the mood in a difficult situation, but I was too drained to react. Just then, Margot popped her head into the office. "Rebecca, Lauren's on the line. She insists on speaking with you." Rebecca shot an annoyed glance at the phone. "Margot, I said no calls." "Sorry, Rebecca, but she's being persistent," Margot explained. Rebecca sighed heavily. "All right, put her through. But don't tell her Andrew is here." I could hear Rebecca's side of the conversation and imagine Lauren on the other end, frantic and emotional. "Lauren, I spoke to Andrew. He is a good man, my client and a friend." "I would have expected better from you," Rebecca said firmly. There was a brief pause, and I could almost hear Lauren stumbling over her excuses. "No excuses," Rebecca continued. "Yes, I'm representing him, and yes, he has a solid case. This won't be easy for you." Rebecca made it clear that Lauren needed to get herself a lawyer, quickly. She also warned her to stay away from the house and keep her distance from me. "I know Andrew put your things on the lawn, but you invited strangers into his home. He has every right to remove your belongings. And by the way, he only had the gun for self-defense in case you were in danger," Rebecca added, referencing the police report from the night before. "Honestly, I'm surprised Andrew didn't resort to violence." Rebecca's voice was cold and resolute. She wasn't swayed by Lauren's tears or pleas. She told her to stay with her friend Karen and have her attorney contact Rebecca when she found one. By the time she hung up, it was clear that Lauren had run out of options, and Rebecca wasn't going to show her any mercy. Turning back to me, Rebecca said, "I hope you caught most of that." I nodded numbly. "Yeah, I did." Rebecca gave me a sympathetic look, but quickly switched back to business. "Now, Andrew, I need those tapes. We need everything we can get to build your case." I handed her the envelope containing the video from last night, the footage of Lauren, Ben, and Reynolds, the acts that had torn my life apart. Rebecca took it, her expression hardening as she prepared for the legal battle ahead. Rebecca glanced at me before opening her laptop. "Andrew, there's something you really need to see," she said, her voice steady but filled with an edge of seriousness. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for whatever she was about to show. She clicked through some files before turning the screen towards me, showing several images from the video. They were stills, each one more damning than the last. There was no mistaking what was happening in them. Lauren, caught in compromising positions with Mark Reynolds and Ben Carter. Rebecca pulled up another file. "I don't want to upset you, but you need to understand who we're dealing with here." I stared at the screen in disbelief as she played a section of the footage. It was from Mike's tennis club. I had barely skimmed through it before, unable to stomach watching it for long. But now, with Rebecca guiding me, I couldn't look away. The scene opened with Lauren and Mike finishing up, but what came next floored me. A group of men had gathered in the locker room, and to my shock, Lauren let them all join in. One by one, they approached her, completely disregarding any sense of decency. Rebecca paused the video at a key moment, her finger hovering over the trackpad. "Recognize him?" she asked, pointing to one man in the frame. A tall, older man with graying hair and a mustache, wrapping a towel around his waist. My heart dropped. "No," I muttered, shaking my head, "but I think you do." She nodded grimly. "That's Mark Reynolds." Just hearing his name was enough to make my blood boil. Rebecca, sensing my growing anger, continued, "We're meeting him at 4 today. You need to be prepared, Andrew. He'll probably deny everything at first, but these images speak for themselves." I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to destroy something. Instead, I nodded. "Let's make sure we use this." We arrived at Mark Reynolds' office on the top floor of a sleek downtown building. My pulse quickened as we rode the elevator up, armed with Rebecca's laptop, printed photos, and everything we needed to bring him down. Inside, the space reeked of wealth, plush furniture, awards, and photos of Reynolds with important figures, all of it designed to show his power. As we sat down, I felt a pair of eyes on me from the hallway, but when I glanced back, I caught only a fleeting glimpse of someone disappearing around a corner. Probably Lauren, I thought, relieved I wouldn't have to see her today. Andrew, I thought this meeting was supposed to be between just us, Mark Reynolds began, glancing uneasily at Rebecca. I brought my attorney, I replied coldly, motioning towards her. Anything you want to say to me, you can say to her. He reluctantly nodded, but before he could say anything more, Rebecca opened her laptop and positioned it between us. You might want to look at this, she said calmly, clicking a few keys before turning the screen toward Reynolds. He paled as the images filled the screen. They clearly showed him and Ben Carter with Lauren, engaging in various acts in what appeared to be his own boardroom. Reynolds' expression shifted from disbelief to horror as the realization of his exposure set in. You recorded this? Reynolds stammered. Rebecca didn't let up. Here's how this is going to go, she said, enjoying the upper hand. First, Lauren keeps her job. Andrew believes she'll need it. Second, Ben is out. Lauren stays, but he's done here. Third, you're going to offer us a financial settlement that reflects the severity of this situation. We'll review your offer and respond within 5 days. She clicked on another file, and the footage played on the screen. I watched as Reynolds' face went pale, while Ben, who had just entered the room, stared down at his shoes, unable to meet my gaze. After they leave, we'll discuss your future here, Reynolds muttered, clearly trying to salvage what little control he had left. We'll be expecting your legal counsel to reach out with a formal settlement offer, Rebecca added, her tone cool and professional. And don't forget, if any of this leaks, you'll both face serious legal repercussions, not just for what you did with Lauren, but for involving an employee in these actions. We gathered our things, leaving Reynolds and Ben in the office to deal with the fallout. As we exited the building, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of satisfaction and anger. Rebecca had handled the situation perfectly, but the deep betrayal still gnawed at me. I knew this was only the beginning. I had not noticed Lauren lurking around the corner, attempting to eavesdrop on our conversation, but Rebecca had. The last thing I overheard was Mark Reynolds barking into the intercom, "Get him here immediately!" I grinned, knowing the confrontation was about to get interesting, especially when Mark found out about the videos I had discovered at home. Once outside, I turned to Rebecca. Why did you suggest Brad might use his own footage against Mark? I asked, genuinely curious about her strategy. Rebecca smirked slightly. Divide and conquer, she explained. It's easier if they don't present a united front. If they're more focused on protecting themselves, they'll turn against each other. Both Brad and Mark have families and reputations to protect. They won't want this to escalate. As we left the building, it hit me. This place, which once represented Lauren's prestigious career, would now forever be a symbol of her betrayal. Rebecca's voice snapped me back to the present. All right, she said, let's grab a drink before our next meeting at the tennis club. We've got some time, and there's something I need to talk to you about, though I'm still figuring out how to say it. We drove across town and stopped at a quiet bar near the tennis club. Inside, Rebecca ordered 2 beers and turned to me, her expression serious. Andrew, I suspect Mark will make us an offer, probably just under $1 million. I know his legal team from previous cases, and they're no amateurs. Mark's practical, so tomorrow I'll let him know that a lowball offer will be a disaster, for both his business and his personal life. I'm going to propose that we ask for $3 million, or we'll walk away from the negotiation table altogether, she disclosed confidently. She paused before continuing, her tone more cautious. I also need to know something else. If Mark's offer doesn't meet your expectations, do I have your permission to really go after Lauren in court? I won't hold back. I need you to be prepared for this to get messy. We may have to reveal damaging information about your marriage, and it could get ugly in public. Are you ready for that? I took a deep breath. I've thought it over. This has gone too far already. I'd prefer to see Mark's offer first, but if it doesn't meet our standards, I trust your judgment to do whatever is necessary. Rebecca nodded, satisfied with my answer. She assured me that if negotiations went south, she would waste no time putting everything in motion. She even hinted at getting the media involved if we needed to apply more pressure. I've got contacts at several news outlets who'd be eager to cover this story, even if they have to censor some of the more explicit details. Rebecca, you've always had my back, and I trust you. I just hate that it's come to this. Being oblivious was easier than being publicly humiliated. But yes, you have my authorization to go all in if necessary. I didn't start this fight, but I will damn well finish it. Rebecca smiled. Understood, Andrew. Now, let's talk about our next meeting. The guy we're meeting is Sean Abbott. He owns the tennis club where all this went down. The man you saw in the video, that's him. He'll likely claim it was just between consenting adults and avoid taking any responsibility. Even Mike, the tennis coach, might just get a slap on the wrist, fired temporarily for appearances, but probably rehired quietly later. Mike's popular at the club, especially among the women, and that's going to play a big role in how Sean handles this. We arrived at the tennis club just in time. It was clear from the start that Rebecca and Sean had a history. There was visible tension between them, even before the conversation began. Mr. Abbott, this is Andrew Thompson, Rebecca began, nodding in my direction. His wife is a member of your club. We recently found out that Mike Johnson, your tennis coach, was having an affair with Mr. Thompson's wife. We need to know what you plan to do about this. Rebecca paused, letting the weight of her words settle as she watched Sean's expression closely. I knew Sean Abbott would try to brush it off, and sure enough, with just a few dismissive words, he tried to wave away Rebecca's concerns. Look, what two consenting adults do behind closed doors on their own time is none of my business, Sean declared smugly. He turned to me adding, and as for you, Mr. Whitman, if you cannot keep your wife satisfied, do not blame me if she wanders. Plenty of unhappy spouses frequent this tennis club, and some come back for the special attention my staff provides. If you catch my drift? Sean grinned slyly. Rage surged through me, but Rebecca was quick to grab my wrist, quietly advising me to stay calm and follow her lead. Sean, Rebecca said sharply, you're assuming this all happened without your knowledge or consent. That is quite the assumption. Without waiting for his response, she pulled out a laptop and placed it on Sean's desk, hitting play and turning the screen toward him. The color drained from Sean's face as he watched the footage. Before he could even react, Rebecca leaned in. You and your staff knowingly took advantage of a member, Lauren Whitman, a married woman whose membership fees were paid by her husband, Andrew. Now, Mr. Whitman is understandably a very dissatisfied customer. Once word of this gets out, every paying husband will start wondering if their wife is doing the same thing while they foot the bill. I'll need to subpoena everyone present in that locker room. I doubt the other married men will appreciate that. Rebecca's tone grew more serious as she continued. And then there is the issue of privacy invasion. Filming in the locker room, Sean. Once we are through with you, your club's reputation will be in tatters, and your finances will crumble. She paused for a moment to let her words sink in. Here is what we want. A significant financial settlement and swift action from you. That could save you a lot of trouble and a lot of money. We watched Sean consider his options, his mind racing. Rebecca, you are something else, he finally said with a sigh, but your logic is sound. I'll call you tomorrow with my offer. If I comply, all of these files stay with me, and this remains confidential. Mike will be fired immediately. Now, if that's all you legal bandits wanted, get out, Sean said, dismissing us with a wave of his hand. Rebecca grinned, collecting the laptop and shutting it off. Oh, and say hi to Victor Ramirez for me, she said with a wink as we left the room. Go to hell, was Sean's only reply, muttered under his breath. Rebecca laughed all the way to the parking lot. Well, that was quite the adventure. Now we wait for the offers, she told me as we headed to her place for a homemade dinner. By the end of the week, Mark Reynolds had offered nearly $2.7 million. Brad Anderson, after naively handing over all his tapes to Mark, found himself jobless as Mark swiftly fired him, leaving Brad with little recourse. I went after the two clients of Brad's who had also been involved with Lauren. Both were desperate to avoid publicity for their companies and personal lives, so they each offered me $1 million to keep quiet. As for Sean Abbott, he refused to make any kind of settlement offer, instead suggesting we take legal action. So we did. In the end, he lost over $3 million, and by the time we were finished with him, His club faced a mass exodus of members, forcing him to give up ownership. Sean thought he could escape unscathed, but the judge was unimpressed with the locker room footage and the infidelity it revealed. As for Lauren, I gave her the house and the car, as she wanted, without having to pay a dime in spousal support. I saw her only twice in court, and both times I called her a strumpet, which made her cry. I often wondered why she cried then, but not before, when she had caused such destruction in my life. Following Rebecca's advice, I ended up with more money than I had ever imagined, though the pain still lingers, haunting me to this day. Lost in thought, all the trials of that dreadful year came flooding back. I had not even realized someone was speaking to me until I snapped out of my reverie and heard the restaurant manager asking if everything was all right. Unsure how long I had been standing there, I shook my head to clear my thoughts and returned to the present. Sorry, just lost in some old memories, I replied to the manager, noticing his curious glance. Much like the way people look at someone lost deep in their thoughts. I headed straight to my ex-wife Lauren Whitman's table, the shock on her face unmistakable. The last time she saw me, I was out of shape, sporting long hair and a beard, still nursing an old knee injury from baseball. I had always used that injury as an excuse for my condition, but the truth was, I had settled into a complacent life with her. Now, I looked entirely different. Shorter hair, a fitter body thanks to regular workouts, and a healed knee, all funded by the settlements I received. My high-end suit added to the transformation, making sure I was presentable in public. I decided to break the ice. You look amazing today, Strumpet. Almost forgot how stunning you can be, I remarked, my tone deliberately aiming to provoke her. My name is Lauren, Andrew. Why can't you call me by my name? She snapped, clearly agitated. I didn't give you the nickname Strumpet. You know who did. I just find it fitting. I warned you 3 years ago. You shattered my heart, I said, watching her face closely. The man beside her, who I now assumed was her new fiancé, began to rise, ready to defend her, but she urged him to stay seated. Tears welled up in her eyes, smearing her makeup. Her fiancé spoke up, Go fix your makeup, Lauren. I'll handle this jerk. With those words, she stood, locking eyes with me as tears streamed down her face. Her reaction surprised me. I didn't think she had any feelings left for me. Maybe it was guilt. As she walked off, I caught a glimpse of a large engagement ring on her finger. You must be Andrew Whitman, Lauren's ex-husband, her fiancé said with a sneer. Indeed, I am. And you must be the new man she's been dreaming about, I replied, picking up on his hostility. I'm Adam, Lauren's fiancé. I'd advise you to watch your language, he warned, clearly trying to avoid a scene. I only have a few questions, and then I'll be out of your life forever, I told him, noticing his puzzled expression. I've been where you are, and I don't want anyone else to go through what I did. I'm sure she's painted me as the terrible husband, abusive, neglectful, or a womanizer, but I'm not here to change your opinion of me. Just a few questions. First, does Karen still host her Avon gatherings on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Adam retorted smugly. Lauren helps Karen with her decor sales on Mondays and Wednesdays. Your memory must be slipping. All right then, does she still play tennis on Saturdays? I asked. Lauren plays tennis on Sundays. Your recollection seems pretty poor for someone who was married to her for so long, he said, clearly pleased with himself. Final question, I said. Have you ever looked under the bottom drawer of the dresser in your living room? No. Why would I do that? He asked, confused. The 3 questions I just asked are why we are no longer together. I still have all the leftover divorce paperwork, emails from Karen and the other women, and hours of videotapes. I've carried these with me for 3 years, and I thought you should have them, I explained, pulling out a worn piece of paper from my wallet. This is what another woman wrote to Karen when she asked how to get rid of me before I discovered her infidelity. After reading that letter, I realized I didn't know Lauren at all. But it all revolves around you, I said, handing him the paper. I knew Lauren's habits well. She always followed the same routines meticulously, sometimes driving me crazy. I suspected that even with a new man, she would stick to her old ways. Adam hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. He reached over and unfolded the letter. I had carried it with me for 3 years, occasionally rereading it as a reminder to better myself so that no woman would ever write such things about me again. Of all the evidence I had collected, that letter had hit me the hardest. Adam read the letter slowly, then set it down. He grabbed a pen, scribbled a note on it, and abruptly left the restaurant without looking back or saying thanks. His face remained expressionless. I leaned over to see what he had written. "I'll be back soon. Please wait here. I need to check under the bottom drawer of the living room dresser." Adam. I sensed that Adam had just seen the truth, even if he didn't like it. The letter seemed to be the tipping point, and now he needed to verify it himself. Leaving the note on Lauren's table, I exited the restaurant. There was no way I was staying there tonight. In the lobby, I called my client, who was fine with rescheduling our meeting since they were running late anyway. Before leaving, I glanced back at the table. Lauren had returned, looking for Adam. When she sat down and noticed her old letter and Adam's note, her face turned pale as she read them. The last time I saw my ex-wife, she was sobbing so intensely that the entire restaurant stared. I felt a twinge of pity, but mostly indifference. That was my final encounter with her. I still wonder if Adam found anything under that dresser drawer Lauren suggested he check. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.